Beautiful. Beautiful. All right, this one's going to be quick, I promise. I know we're probably getting sick of Metroid, and so am I, honestly. Truth be told, the only reason I'm playing this and not Metroid Fusion is because this fit into my chronological playing order in a way that didn't make me play 2 Metroid games back to back, so you could really consider this a dual review of sorts, at least for the shared gameplay mechanics between Fusion and Zero Mission. Anyway, Metroid Zero Mission was released in 2004 for the Game Boy Advance and directed by the same guy as did Super Metroid and Metroid Fusion. This dude knows his Zero Suit Samus, alright? And it shouldn't surprise you when I say that by now, he and his team know what they're doing. Zero Mission is a remake of the first Metroid game on the NES, which was a bad game. It was ambitious, don't get me wrong, but it was ambitious in a way that wasn't at all enjoyable for a lot of people, especially those that didn't grow up with it all memorized. It features much of the same plot and progression of that original game, with many of the additions found in later games like the Speed Booster and Charge Beam from Super Metroid and the Ledge Climb from Fusion, along with the addition of an in-game map first seen in Super Metroid, which the original lacked. In terms of story, it follows the sparse plot of the original, where Samus is hired to deal with space pirates led by Mother Brain after they stole the eponymous Metroids from a research station. After killing both Kraid and Ridley, you take the fight to Mother Brain and then have to escape. Zero Mission then adds something of an epilogue chapter to the game by having more space pirates tell Samus... Fuck. Zero Mission then adds something of an epilogue chapter to the game by having more space pirates tell Samus to draw her last pathetic card so they can end this, and force her to sneak through their base and an area that, I'm not kidding, is called Chozodia. After passing a trial set forth by the Chozo that originally raised her on this planet, Samus is given a super suit, defeats the space pirates again, and actually escapes this time. The story is nothing special, and yes, I did go over all of that just to say that one thing and to make that stupid joke. Truth be told, speaking about Zero Mission in the context of the rest of the series is very difficult. Super Metroid itself, while technically having a different story, was already more or less a 16-bit remake of the original game, like most SNES games were. So to have another remake of the same game makes it feel a little bit redundant, even though I think Zero Mission is pretty easily superior to Super Metroid, thanks in no small part to the lessons it took from that game. I think Zero Mission is a textbook example of a 6 out of 10. I guess I can talk about some small annoyances though. For one, it retains some of the frustrating design elements of the rest of the series, where the intended way to progress through the game is little more than a long fetch quest chain of going from one pickup to another, where that path often has you go far into an area, only to slog right back out the way you came, and then back again about 10 minutes later. It isn't nearly as egregious as we saw in Metroid Prime, but it is there, and yes, I'm aware that there are a bunch of sequence breaks, but again, we're talking about the intended first-time player experience. As well, there were some issues I had with the way that Samus controlled in 3 ways. First, I really hate the way Samus jumps in this game. It's so quick and sudden that I can never really get a grasp on it. It also feels like the jump arc itself is a bit stubby, even with the high jump boots you get. Second, Samus retains all momentum if she does a spinning jump unless you specifically pull back on the controls. This isn't a flaw or bug, it was clearly intended. This one is entirely a me problem, but I just don't like it when games do that. I prefer when my characters stop moving when I let go of the stick. It makes more sense to me that way. Third, the controls to climb up a ledge are dumb. Why do I have to jump off a ledge? Why can't I just drop down? Why do I have to hold on to the ledge and hit the A button to climb up it instead of just hitting the up button? Little things like that consistently got in the way of my enjoyment of the exploration, which was otherwise, well, I suppose if the game does have a universal flaw that most people would probably be annoyed with, it would be in its structure, because I kinda lied to you earlier. It's probably obvious based on the footage, but this isn't really a remake of Metroid 1, at least in terms of gameplay. In that regard, it's a pure sequel to Metroid Fusion, and it retains more or less the same structure of progression. The game tells you where to go all of the time. You have to activate these Chozo statues, which give you a big stupid marker on your map that leads you briskly from one upgrade to the next. Now, hint systems in Metroidvanias are a good thing, but that's only the case under 2 circumstances. Either it's optional, or it's vague. I should not be forced into having directions through the game world like this. I should be free to explore and get lost if I choose to do so. But the ways out of the upgrade paths are always gated behind activating these hints. And even if you close your eyes when they appear, they'll always show up on your map anyway, so I guess you can't use that either if you don't want hints. This type of system worked for Metroid Fusion because it was clear from the beginning that it was trying to do something different with the established formula of the series and genre, but Zero Mission receives no such nuance. It's trying to be a remake, and it fails because it fundamentally misunderstands what was important to the original Metroid's vision, which is the feeling of claustrophobic exploration. Zero Mission doesn't have that. In terms of personal gripes, aside from the entire ending sequence, I took issue with two things: length and difficulty. I am aware that there's a hard mode that I didn't play, but Metroid games aren't supposed to be piss-free on normal, so I still consider the game's difficulty a huge issue. Energy tanks aren't all that well hidden, so you'll often have an abundance of health, and enemies don't do that much, especially when considering the amount of farming spots and save points put in throughout the world. The only times I died were in specific stupid endgame areas and the major boss fights, and only one of those was actually hard, and the others were because I was careless or bored by that point. And keep in mind, I played off of OBS while I streamed, so I even had like a quarter-second delay extra from all of my inputs. Kraid and Ridley both look great, but after only a few seconds, it became clear that you could spam them down due to the abundance and power of missiles and super missiles throughout the game. Mother Brain is the only part of the game that I would consider hard, but that's in quotations because it's just stupid. The only way to damage the boss is to stay on a platform after its projectile attack, which is next to impossible thanks to the 4 different projectile spitting entities on screen at the same time, coupled with you only having 2 little blocks of platform for the whole fight. It was difficult in a very unenjoyable way for me, and I wish they would have considered moving away from the original in that instance. The other issue I had was with the length, and this is fairly self-explanatory. It's too short, and apparently a lot of other critics agreed with me on that one. I beat the game in about 4 hours, albeit without going for 100% because I never go for 100% in Metroid games because it's just missile pickups that I'm missing. Anyway, a lot of this would be helped by getting rid of the hint system, but it's also true that there's just not a lot of content here, especially in comparison to Metroid Fusion, which came before. Finally, that ending sequence is just kind of bad. It feels extremely tacked on, even considering the nothing burger that is the rest of the game's story. Having Samus's mission completed and then having a whole other sequence try and usurp the role of that climax just didn't work. This is compounded with the fact that the stealth section takes way too fucking long and is insanely boring, not tense, and the final boss being just a random robot shaped like Ridley who is even easier than the other bosses in the game. Out of any game we've looked at so far, this was by far the single worst sequence I've gone through. Like, yeah, I didn't enjoy Super Metroid that much, and the Inverted Castle and Symphony is whack, but this was the only time I was completely bored in this retrospective so far. Now, I know I haven't been particularly positive in this review, and I do apologize about that, but that's because my positivity would have been to repeat what I've already said about games like Super Metroid and Metroid Prime. I like the environments, I like the upgrades, and the game has an excuse of why they're all repeated from earlier titles this game, so good on that. And overall, I do like the game. You can watch it in my stream. I was having a good time. It's just, it's just a bit stale. I don't feel like my time was wasted playing through it, but it's about as close to that feeling as it could get. Whether that's because of the game itself or because of the close proximity to which I played the other games in the series, I don't quite know about that one. We'll have to see over time how I kind of feel about that. For our retrospective, the only thing that Zero Mission adds, which admittedly is a huge upgrade, is a better map. Not only do we have door indicators, letting us more easily remember which doors are activated by which weapon, but we also now have an indicator for when areas have secrets, with this little circle in the zone on the map. This is huge, genuinely. For every game that has this blocky style of map, this is a must-have going forward. It makes exploring new areas a lot more exciting, since a new pickup could be around every corner, and makes backtracking a lot easier because you now know exactly where you need to go. For backtracking specifically, this is what I prefer. If I were to complain a little bit about it, I would maybe not have the indicators appear until you get the map thing for the area, but that's neither here nor there. That's a minor gripe. Overall, I told you it'd be short. Metroid Zero Mission is an alright game. It's too short, has a dog ending sequence, and has some wonky controls sometimes, but is a harmless and even fun Metroidvania if you're looking for something to play on the go. With the addition of a great map, it's even one step closer to feeling even remotely modern. Join me next time to finally, unabashedly move away from the Metroid and Castlevania series with Cave Story, the second game of this retrospective that I've never played. Wish me luck.